And here we are. Welcome, everybody. Is my screen a little bit tilted? No, it's all good. It's all good. How are we all doing today? Manly P. Hall stream, Secret Teachings of All Ages. Halfway through the introduction. We're getting there, guys. We're getting there. So welcome to these streams. If you haven't been before, we are going through Manly P. Hall's Secret Teachings of All Ages, and we're reading it together, feeding off each other's wisdom, like an Ouroboros human centipede of knowledge and gnosis. Mwah. Now, if you'd like to support these streams, give a one-time donation via PayPal, or consider paying monthly via Ko-fi. Ko-fi's better than Patreon, okay? Trust me. Or become a YouTube member and you can talk to me in the secret Telegram chat. There's also crypto wallets. Thank you who, someone drops 150 in Solana last week, and I was like, what? Okay, time to buy some fart coin. Thank you. Crypto bros, I need to avoid taxes. Now, let's just jump right in and see who's in chat today. Howdy chat. Welcome Skywatcher1229 to, you've become a YouTube member, Psychotronic Researcher. Tyler's here. Tyler's been here for over 10 months. Welcome, Tyler. Necrodancer's here. We got Kimberly in the chat, and Surf dropped £5. Thank you very much, Surf. We'll get right into it. Ethan Hazelfield. Howdy. Nulu's in the chat. Another guy. Howdy, howdy. I'm up to chapter 150 in Circle of Inevitability, by the way. I don't know. I actually like it. I think it's good. I think controversial. I think Lumian's actually a good main character. I have no problems with him. Anyway, let's just jump into it, boys. So, last week I think we went through the Plato. Well, we were going through pre-Platonic philosophers. So Manly started right at the beginning, and I actually think this is true. Oh, sorry, another guy says better than Klein. No, not better than Klein. But he's different, but it's not bad. You know, he has his hang-ups, but I like him. He's good. Howdy, PG in the chat. So Manly P. Hall, he's starting at the beginning, and I think it's good to start at the beginning, especially in Western esotericism, and that is Plato. People want to sanitize the Western tradition. They want to make it like a linear progress, and it's all clean and nice, and we were all rationalists, and then we just slowly got rid of superstition, and as we progressed, and it's like, no. We were schizoid freaks all the way through, and we've been going off on tangents all the way through. And Plato, he's not a rationalist. He's got some sexy esoteric stuff there, okay? So you got to start at the beginning. So he's starting with the pre-Socratics. He's taking us through the Greek classics. So we got to him talking about the Platonic discipline and its foundations. Oh yeah, and learning of reminiscence. So we were talking about the art of memory there, how it all kind of started back in this day. I think they talk about reminiscence. I think the art of memory itself, or the first kind of memory working, is in Aristotle's work, though. I believe in Aristotle's Rhetoric, there's a chapter on the art of memory. Connor says, this guy has no idea what he's talking about. None of us do, Connor. None of us do. Now, Plato. From Thomason's Recur des Figures. Also, this is the image here. Plato's real name was Aristocles. Oh, I didn't know that was his real name. So I knew Plato was a nickname. Plato just means broad, because Plato was a wrestler, famous wrestler of his time. And he had really broad shoulders because he was jacked, bro. He was the gym bro of his years. So Plato is his wrestling name. So Aristocles, okay. When his father brought him to study with Socrates, the great skeptic declared that on the previous night he had dreamed of a white swan. Ooh, that's sexy. Which was an omen that his new disciple was to become one of the world's illumined. There is a tradition that the immortal Plato was sold as a slave by the king of Sicily. Okay. That's very interesting, though. That's very interesting. So dreams, this is going all the way back. Dreams reveal wisdom. Yes, another guy. Yes. After the death of Plato, his disciples separated into two groups. One, the academics, continued to meet in the academy where once he had presided, the other, the Peripatetics, removed to the Lyceum under the leadership of Aristotle. Okay, oh really? That's so interesting. Plato recognized Aristotle as his greatest disciple based, and according to Philoponus, referred to him as the mind of the school. Aristotle, smart nerd. If Aristotle were absent from the lectures, Plato would say, the intellect is not here. Damn. Okay. I mean, you could take this as sarcastic, like, you know, when the smart kid's away, it's like, oh, the brain's not here. But no, that's very interesting. The intellect is not here. I wonder on that translation as well, because sometimes intellect and heart are kind of switched up. Self-dribbling basketball in the chat. Welcome. Can't watch live. We'll watch the vid. Hope you'll have a good reading. Oh, thank you, self-dribbling. You too. Have a good day, bro. Of the prodigious genius of Aristotle, Thomas Taylor writes. Thomas Taylor is based, by the way, in his Introduction to the Metaphysics. We consider that he was not only well acquainted with every science, as his works abundantly evince, but that he wrote on almost every subject which is comprehended in the circle of human knowledge, and this with matchless accuracy and skill. We know not which to admire most, the penetration or extent of his mind, of the philosophy of Aristotle. The same author says, the end of Aristotle's moral philosophy is perfection through the virtues, and the end of his contemplative philosophy, a union with the one principle of all things. Damn. So he not was only a gigachat of the mind, but he was outstanding morally, and his philosophy, and also a true mystic. So he was everything, all in one. Intellect and heart interchangeable. Yeah, there's a kind of a little debate. The intellectus, the thing that you think with, is it your heart or is it your mind? Or when they refer to, you know, the nous, is it in your heart or is it in your brain? That kind of thing. There's, depending on, I mean, I don't know ancient Greek, so depending, that's what, it's the same thing with like Tibetan or Buddhist texts. Whenever you see it written in English and it says mind, you're like, bruh, in Tibetan Buddhism, there's like 7 different minds. What word was there that you just translated as mind in an English text? And it's the same thing with ancient kind of Greek. Whenever I see like mind, I'm like, or intellect, I'm like, that's interesting. It's just a more of a thing to note there. There's an intelligence of the body and intelligence of the mind. Tom Berg's, yeah, exactly. Now, Aristotle conceived philosophy to be twofold, practical and theoretical. Practical philosophy embraced ethics and politics. In other words, being a good boy and working with others. Theoretical philosophy, physics and logic, how the world works and how our consciousness works. Metaphysics, he considered to be the science concerning that substance which has the principle of motion and rest inherent to itself. Very interesting. So the origin of things is in metaphysics. To Aristotle, the soul is that by which man first lives, feels, and understands. Hence, to the soul he assigned 3 faculties, nutritive, sensitive, and intellective. It's interesting. I feel like there's a 3-fold... I'm swearing like howdy Logan in the chat. There's a breaking up of the soul in medieval alchemy, and they say like one part is kind of spiritual, and then there's like other parts, and one part is like etheric or vital. So it's interesting. I'm just commenting, it's like it's almost like this is a continuation of that, just another language. He further considered the soul to be twofold, rational and irrational. Now, what do we mean by irrational? And in some particulars, elevated to the sense, so almost irrational, so conscious and subconscious. Oh, Ruben. Howdy, Ruben. You said good night from the Netherlands and then retracted your message. Okay. I saw it, though. You can't hide from me, Ruben. Good night, though. Have a good time, bro. And in some particulars, elevated the sense perceptions above the mind. Aristotle defined wisdom as the science of the first causes. Oh, wait, sorry. Aristotle defined wisdom as the science of first causes. So that would be, wisdom is when you know the essence of a thing, not the kind of the mechanics that comes out of it. That's interesting. But how do you reach the essence of a thing? Do you learn around it until you eventually reach the essence? Or can you just penetrate still to the essence of a thing? Like if I meet you as a person, how long does it take for me to get to know you? Now, first meeting, I may learn your name. And then when we meet again, I learn a little bit about your past. And then we meet again, it's like you mentioned something about your school. We meet again, it's like I learn where you work. And then I learn about your family members on the next meeting. It takes several meetings. I learn all of these things about you. But eventually, it's like if we've spent like 10 years together and we're exchanging ideas, it's like I know you at a fundamental, essential level. But it seems like there are some people who can kind of bypass the exterior and they can just cut to the essence of things, and you can intuit something about a person before you meet them. This guy's going to be a dick, or like, you know, something like that. It's like there's a part of you that can intuit the essence of a thing, and there's a part of you that kind of participates in what would you call particulars. So Nulu. Nulu. Yeah, my Catholic metaphysics professor taught us that Aristotle's metaphysics is the science of wisdom because it gives you understanding of the relationships between universals and particulars. Yeah, and so then you have these external things and the essence of a thing, and then what's the relationship between the externals and that prime essence. Yeah. And that's interesting, the Catholics, the whole thing, it's interesting, you know, when they talk about, in ancient times, they talk about, well, through Aristotle, they talk about passive intellect and active intellect. And active intellect kind of goes on to become, you know, the higher cylinders in Gurdjieff, or it comes on to be the higher genius, which is then extrapolated outside as like this holy guardian angel that you kind of summon in certain magic. So it's like through that bifurcation, active and passive intellect from Aristotle's metaphysics, is seen kind of throughout the Western tradition. It becomes this big holding point. And it's really interesting that in philosophy, no one talks about that nowadays in modern times, except for the Catholics, specifically Thomistic Catholics, because Thomas Aquinas was so hardcore into Aristotle that it's like, he's the only one that kind of still uses those terms. So if you study like a university course on like Thomas Aquinas, eventually, I believe in Aquinas, it's specifically Aquinas has an essay, or there's a part of his doctrine where he talks about how angels think. And his concept is, you know, humans have an active and a passive intellect. Angels only have an active intellect. So an angel looks at you and just immediately sees your essence, and it's like, this guy's an ass. Or like, well, yeah, it will see directly into your essence, which is interesting. Now, so that's interesting. Wisdom is an understanding of the essence of a thing. If you can understand the essence of a thing, that's wisdom. Whereas everything else around it, that's just knowledge. That's data. The four major divisions of his philosophy are dialectics, physics, ethics, and metaphysics based. Hey, Voice in the Wilderness, welcome. God is defined as the first mover, the best of beings. Okay, so is God a being in Aristotle's vision? An immovable substance separate from sensible things, void of corporeal quantity. Okay, so he doesn't have quantity, so God is just quality itself. Without parts and indivisible, Platonism is based upon a priori reasoning, Aristotelism upon posteriori reasoning. I'm going to be real honest, I always confuse a priori and a posteriori. I wish they just used different terms like induction and deduction. I just like, you know, I look at Kant and my mind just melts. Logan in the chat, I was so sad when your membershiped immortality and the destiny of man, but I realized if any video should require membership. Oh, okay. Now that was, my old vids. I completely forget about my old vids. I think you literally yesterday someone was like talking and being like, yeah, I loved your video on theurgy. And I was like, I made a video on theurgy? But anyway, yeah. I find I just it's okay. They're all right. They're all right. I'll remake them all eventually. Exactly, Kimberly. Adamu says a priori before, posteriori after. Yeah, but like, what does that mean? So a priori is you try to deduce like a truth, and posteriori is you like experience a phenomena and then you try to study it. I guess that's a good way to kind of like break it down. Bruh, come on. Those videos, the videos are cringe, bruh. The videos are cringe. That's before I did any editing and I was in my old roommate. I was using my old roommate setup with this freaking banana picture on the wall. Aristotle taught his pupil Alexander the Great to feel that if he had not done a good deed, he had not reigned that day. Among his followers were Theophrastus, Strato, Lyco, Aristo, Critolus, and Diodorus. A priori truth is truth that you intuitively hold before any phenomena. Posteriori is just empiricism, rationalism, says Nulu. Okay, yeah. And once again, I've read this multiple times. I'm just going to forget again, and next time I see them, I'll be like, duh. Yeah. Intuitively in the philosophical sense. Thank you, Adamu. Another guy. Every human has a little bit of cringe in his essence. Very true. Very true. We all walk. The line between based and cringe is drawn within our essence. Ollie in the chat, howdy. Cringe is what makes a man. Okay, let's keep going, guys. Of skepticism, as propounded by Pyro, I thought his name was Pyro. Pyro? Okay, Pyro of Ellis, and by Timian, Sextus Empiricus, oh yeah, baby, said that those who seek must find or deny they have found or can find, or persevere in the inquiry. Those who suppose they have found truth are called dogmatists. They are the convinced, as I like to call them. They have convinced themselves and they wish to persuade others. Those who think it incomprehensible are the academics. Yeah, I know, right? You can't even really... ontology is incomprehensible, so you may as well not talk about it. Yeah, shut up, bro. Those who still seek are the skeptics, the real skeptics. The attitude of skepticism towards the knowable is summed up by Sextus Empiricus in the following words. But the chief ground of skepticism is that to every reason there is an opposite reason equivalent, which makes us forbear to dogmatize. What? Chief ground of skepticism is that to every reason there is an opposite reason equivalent, which makes us forbear to dogmatize. I'm gonna need a translation on that one. He's just kind of is that almost like an early dialectic right there? The skeptics were strongly opposed to the dogmatists and were agnostic in that they held the accepted theories regarding deity to be self-contradictory and undemonstrable. How, asked the skeptic, can we indubiate knowledge of God, knowing not his substance, form, or place? For while philosophers disagree irreconcilably on these points, their conclusions cannot be considered as undoubtedly true. Since absolute knowledge was considered unattainable, the skeptics declared the end of their discipline to be in opinionatives, in disturbance, in impulsives, moderation, and in disquietives, suspension. In disquietive suspension is interesting because that's very, Aristotle as well. That's if you entertain a thought without believing it. You hold it in suspension. The sect of the Stoics was founded by Zeno. Another guy just saying, I guess that it's trying to say that if there is X, there is also Y reason opposite. So you can't be convinced by either of them. Yeah, that's why I was thinking this is just like a dialectics thing, which is interesting. An ancient Greek Hegelian dialectic. So we got Zeno up in here. And so it's always interesting that Zeno, I keep on forgetting that he was the founder of the Stoics, because I always just see him as this weird Parmenidesian kind of guy who kind of follows in that weird logic. The Citian, who studied under Crates, the Cynic, from which sect the Stoics had their origin. Okay, so the Stoics kind of came out of the Cynics. That's interesting. Because it's then the Stoics then kind of combine with Platonism as well. Zeno was succeeded by Cleanthes, Chrysippus. Chrysippus is interesting because I know he's a guy who got logic right. Like, everybody focuses on Aristotelian logic. But there's some kind of, not mistake, but Chrysippus's logic, I heard someone say once that if we all followed Chrysippus's logic instead of Aristotle's logic, we would have had computers in like the Middle Ages, like way sooner. So he was like a better logician, which is interesting because he's seen as a Stoic. I had to be a Cynic so that I could become a Stoic. Exactly. Zeno of Tarsi. So there's a second Zeno up in here. We got Diogenes, Antipater. So this is another guy. This is that thing that I was telling you about. In ancient Greece, if you had a twin, that you would both get the same name, but one of you would just get anti in front of your name. So there's a guy called Pater, and his brother and his brother was a Stoic philosopher, Antipater. So if you have a kid called Richard, there'd be a guy called Anti-Richard. Panaetius and Posidonius. Most famous. So all of a lot of these guys, you just hear their names and it's like most of them have been lost to history. Anti-ligma of testes. Yes, exactly, Adamu. Was Chrysippus a Platonist or middle Platonist? Chrysippus was a Stoic. Chrysippus. Anyway, most famous of the Roman Stoics are Epictetus and Marcus Aurelius, because they're the guys who we have. A lot of people don't know there's a lot of Stoic literature has just been lost to time. I'm pretty sure we don't have any of Zeno's Stoic stuff anymore. We don't have any of the early Stoic works. We just have Middle Stoicism, basically. Epictetus, Marcus Aurelius, frickin' what's his name? Who's that? Seneca, the guy that got killed. We got the Enchiridion, we got the Meditations. What did Seneca write? Or is it just his... What's his book called? I haven't read Seneca. The Stoics were essentially... You know what's always funny about Marcus Aurelius? The main thing I remember about Meditations is just there's this one bit in the middle of the book where he's like... I think it's when he's talking about lust, and he's like, you don't need to feel lustful from young boys. And I just remember reading that and being like, what? Huh? And I'm like... Did Marcus Aurelius, like, get the hots for young boys? And he's like, don't be tempted by young boys. Or is he, like, just telling that to his friends or something? It just kind of, like, blew me out of the water, and that's the thing that's stuck in my head after all this time. Chris Lands, howdy. The simulation will unearth the teachings of Platonists. Okay. Boss Man's in the chat, hello. Unrelated to the stream, but you looked up Nicolas Cage is interested in Jakob Boehm, like you mentioned last stream, and it turns out it's true. Nice. Real. Confirmed. Nicolas Cage is a bohemian mystic. Logan in the chat, do you think there would be any fruit to a book club covering the Master Key system by Hanel, or do you think that one is a pretty straightforward read? I mean, look, there's always fruit to book clubs. Start on your channel, bro. Just do it. Marcus, Julio Maris in the chat. Marcus for sure swung both ways. Yeah, I bet he did. Those crazy Romans. The Stoics were essentially pantheists. That's interesting. So chat's just making me laugh. Since they maintained that as there is nothing better than the world is God. Zeno declared that the reason of the world is diffused throughout it as seed. Stoicism is a materialistic philosophy enjoining voluntary resignation to natural law. There is, they say it's a materialistic philosophy, but there's still like this weird hidden aspect to it. Because the thing about in Stoicism, because it's like we consider it materialist, but then with Stoicism, they were like the first people to esoterically interpret texts, and also they were, I'm pretty sure they were hardcore into divination, because they had this concept that the world is like clockwork, it's material, but there are links that you don't see. And so it's kind of like, you know, when it rains, like if you hold a pine cone and before it rains, the pine cone will shut up. And so you look at a pine cone, and if it's shut up, it's like, oh, it's going to rain. There's some kind of link there. It's not that the pine cone shutting up makes it rain, but because it's going to rain, the pine cone shuts up. There's this thing. There are these irrational links to the world. So the Stoics would be like, kill a goat and like open up its liver, and then depending on how its entrails fall, that will like tell you, you know, if there's going to be a good crop harvest, but real. And it's like, we can't logically tell you the link that like from the goat to the crop harvest, but there are these hidden kind of strings and causal things in the world. So the Stoics, even though they were like, oh yeah, they were materialists, like, no, there was still something like weird and esoteric about them, because they had this weird thing about divination. Voice in the Wilderness, not to get off the subject, but would you ever consider reading Jason Reza Georgiani and the Club at some point? Oh, 100%. Psychotron Club confirmed. I mean, it's one of those things, I don't want to like, I don't know. I mean, it's more copyright issue. I'm not sure how balls deep YouTube will be with like, if I just read out one of his newer books or something, but I don't know, maybe, I mean, it's one of those things. It's like, you know, you read it out, it's advertisement. Put an affiliate link in the YouTube description. It could work out. We'll see. Maybe I'll get his permission. I tentatively have not like direct communication, but I'm like know several people who kind of know a guy who can just directly talk to him. The world is God. Blasphemy. Exactly. Tyler says, sounds like shamanism. Yeah, so it's one of those things. I'm not sure if the classification of pantheism is correct for these guys, but because it's one of those things. I mean, when they say gods, because they really want it to be like, there's this meme nowadays. It's like when the Greeks said gods, they were just talking about psychological processes, and it's like, And it allows us to retroactively be like, yes, they saw nature as one thing, and then just aspects of nature as kind of different psychological processes. And it's like, yeah, maybe. It's definitely, I mean, look, it's a good, you can definitely get gold out of framing it that way. And then you can kind of interact with it and it can have meaning for you, but that may not exactly have been how they saw it. Can I ask for permission to read? Yeah. I could. I've got we're talking about Georgiani, right, in the chat. Yeah, I can ask a guy who can get permission. Yeah, I know a guy. I know a couple of people. Because it's like I'm friends with the admin of his Telegram chat, and you know, I can also just, I'm not like ultra close or anything, but what's his name? Lev from BTR, I've like DM'd before, and he's really friendly, so I can just be like, hey Lev, can you ask Georgiani? The Stoics, Nulu says, the Stoics were aware of divine series that get clearly defined by Neoplatonism. Exactly. Adam, I must say the idea that the world is a clock repulses me. Yeah, I just use that per an example. It's not that they believed that, but it's like they had a very, I'm not sure if they weren't deterministic, but they definitely saw like these chain kind of reactions. Hence the divination thing. That was I just wanted to talk about their esoteric, in a sense I wanted to like make out that they're esoteric, not just pure materialists. It's like they had esoteric, their philosophy led to divination, so it can't just be like a rationalist, materialist, reductionist thing. Now, blah blah blah, there is nothing better in the world is God. Zeno declared that the reason for the world, so seed, yes, spermatikos, logos, spermatikos, Stoicism is a materialistic philosophy. Yeah. Doubt, press X to doubt. Chrysippusy baby, maintained that good and evil being contrary, both are necessary since each sustains the other. Okay. Very interesting. The soul was regarded as a body distributed throughout the physical form and subject to dissolution with it. Okay. So this is interesting as well. So there's something ethereal that arises or is connected to the physical body, and when your physical body dies, the psychic processes that are you also disperse. This is according to the Stoics. So now it makes me wonder, in esoteric Stoicism, do they believe there is a path to immortality? Though some of the Stoics held that wisdom prolonged the existence of the soul, after death is what he means. Actual immortality is not included in their tenets that we know of. The soul was said to be composed of 8 parts. Okay, 5 senses. That's very interesting. 5 senses: the generative power, sex, baby, vocal power, the power of speech, and an 8th, or hegemonic part? Okay, so a sovereign part. That's really interesting. Does everyone know the 8 parts of the mind in Tibet? I know in like Tibetan Buddhism and also in Raja Yoga, because it's the same bifurcation. It's the 5 senses are seen as different minds. Like if I touch you and I tickle you, you go, oh, it tickles. That's I'm putting an input and it's producing thought, therefore it's a part of the mind. You see something and it begins an association of thoughts. That's a mind in and of itself. So the 5 senses, and here they have the generative power. In Tibetan Buddhism, there's a part that like thinks, and then there's this part that judges, and then there's another part that it's like the alaya, the thing that is like a storehouse of all memory. And it's like there's these 3 things that are extrapolate from the senses. And it's like the thing that thinks and the thing that judges are almost completely simultaneous. Like as soon as the thought comes, it's immediately like, you know, like you think of dog poop and it's like, oh, gross. It's like, that's the judgment part. Or you think of roses and you're like, oh, I love roses. That's the judgment part. And it's like meditation, or part of meditation is to stretch those 2 apart so that you can kind of separate their functions. But it's interesting. And I mean, when someone told me this, I'm not like a Tibetan Buddhist, like hardcore bro, but I know Raja Yoga quite well. And when they told me that, I was like, bro, isn't that just Raja Yoga with extra steps? It's like, that's Manas Buddhi Atman for real. Yes, exactly, Bossmans. In Tibetan Buddhism, the internal perception of things to the mind is considered is it considered a sense? Yet someone else told me that this is how they view it, baby. It's interesting. The soul is composed of 8 parts. So that's very interesting. The Stoics, I don't know. There's this thing about how the Vedic stuff is just Eastern Platonism. You're really seeing how the ancient Indians and the ancient Greeks, there's this PP touch, divided by distance, but connected by esotericism. There's something there. Something there is PP touching, baby. If only we had records of Atlantis. Anyway. But seriously, there's something interesting. And it's interesting here. The soul, considered, is the 5 senses, the generative power, your power to speak, or perhaps riddle and persuade. And the part of you that's sovereign, that then watches, like the consciousness in and of itself. It's interesting. Yeah, same schizoprophet. Same but different, but also the same. Nature was defined as God mixed throughout the substance of the world. Nature was defined as God mixed throughout the substance of the world. So it's not... Nature was defined... Because I would say God is the substance of the world. Okay. But it's saying nature. Oh, they're just saying nature as in a universal thing. Is God mixed with this? I don't know, though, but, like, you're separating God from the substance of the world. Is then God really... Anyway, all things were looked upon as bodies, either corporeal or incorporeal. So you can either engage with them with your five senses, or you can't engage with them with your five senses. But they will have effects on the world, and from studying the phenomena, from studying the effects, you can deduce the cause, or the incorporeal reality. Kimberly says, probably doing the Vatican, we gotta raid that shit. Yeah, exactly. That's got the... There's so much... The problem with the Vatican archives is, though, all of that shit's is gonna be in, like, old languages, and you're gonna need a guy to restore the texts. You're gonna need a guy to translate the... But it's not just, like, translate ancient Greek. It's gonna be, like, a translation of an obscure dialect of Middle Italian or something. And so it's just going to be like, so it's not just that you need like Italian, Spanish, and Greek translators. It's like you need the old style translators, or very hyper specific, weird medieval Latin shorthand, like a French author in medieval times whose first language was French wrote in Latin. So it would have been different from an Italian guy in the Middle Ages writing in Latin. He would have had his own kind of thing. And it's just, there's so much pain. When you actually think about the Vatican archives, there's so much pain in trying to actually extract anything of substance from it. It's not just... There's so many barriers to actually getting things out of the Vatican archive that are just natural barriers. It's like, if they wanted to hide something, you would just never find it. That's how crazy it is. But anyway, that hegemonic part was interesting. Now, let's continue. Oh, the problem of diversity here. From Kircher's Ars Magna Siendi. Wait, hold up. Bob Mann says, just learn Latin. Nah, bro. Because it's not just learning Latin. The problem is there's classical Latin and there's medieval Latin. And like classical Latin is all good, but with medieval Latin, it's people who don't speak Latin as their first language learn Latin as a university so that they can speak in university, and then they talk about metaphysics. So they're writing theology in not their first language. It's incredibly painful. Nulu says, you're going to need someone who knows medieval Italian, who knows classical Latin, who knows Koine Greek, who knows Coptic dialects, ancient Egyptian, who can also decode Atlantean script. Oh, baby. Oh, I wish. Is there a guy called Ligma in the chat? Howdy, Ligma. Welcome. What does Ligma mean? Logan says, do you believe in control or the illusion of control? Do you believe we actually have input outside of will and intention, or that control is illusory? We're watching things already in motion, baby. It depends. So here, it's the same thing with like free will. Free will exists, but you may not have it. You have to gain it somehow. So that's what the art is for. Control is power. To have power is to have control. I think it just might be easier to mine what you're interested in out of the astral instead of the Vatican. Yeah, I agree, Adamu. I agree. Just learn Latin, bro, says Out Tuition. No. Anyway, let's keep going, guys. This diagram, in the above diagram, Kircher arranges 18 objects in 2 vertical columns, and then determines the number of arrangements in which they can be combined by the same method. Kircher further estimates that 50 objects may be arranged in this amount. Jesus Christ. What is that? A million, billion, trillion, quadrillion, quintillion. What's after a quintillion? Sextillion? Septillion? Octillion? Enillion? Nonillion? Decillion? Dodecillion? Bruh. And, wow. Okay. That's crazy. Combinations. From this, it will be evident that infinite diversity is possible, for countless parts of the universe may relate to each other in an incalculable number of ways, and through the various combinations, these limitless subdivisions of being, infinite individuality and infinite variety must inevitably result. Thus, it is further evident that life can never be monotonous or exhaust the possibilities of variety. Very based. Giugiani would approve. Nulu says, remote viewing the Vatican archives while my astral body meditating within Akashic records in a prayer circle with Hermes. That's the ideal, baby. That's the ideal. Our tuition says it's an omt million. Okay. Nick D. Howdy, Nick D. Who drew all those lines? Athanasius Kircher, apparently. It's a Gurgillion. That's hilarious. From now on, any big number over a dodecillion, is called a Gurgillion. It's what Gurdjieff would have wanted. Meekness marked the attitude of the Stoic philosopher. So when the Bible says the meek would inherit the earth, what they meant was gym bros who get into philosophy. While Diogenes was delivering a discourse against anger, one of his listeners spat contemptuously in his face. Receiving the insult with humility, the great Stoic was moved to retort, I am not angry, but in doubt whether I ought to be so or not. Yeah, that's an interesting story, because it's like one of those things. It's not about being angry, but you can't let people walk over you. So, are you going to be a bitch, or are you going to give him a slap? Gym cells. Epicurus of Samos, now we get an Epicureanism up in here, was the founder of the Epicurean sect, which in many respects resembles the Cyrenaic, but is higher in its ethical standards. The Epicureans also posited pleasure as the most desirable state. Weren't they like negative hedonists or something? As in, they were hedonists. Life is about seeking pleasure, but if you eat a bunch of food and you get a stomach ache, that's displeasure, so really you should eat in moderation for the most pleasure. And so they had this weird hedonism that bent back on itself and became a negative hedonism, but conceived it to be a grave and dignified state achieved through renunciation of those mental and emotional inconsistencies which are productive of pain and sorrow. Epicurus held that as the pains of the mind and soul are more grievous than those of the body, so the joys of the mind and soul exceed those of the body. So I'm just reading chat. That's funny. One whole Evangelion. Another guy, it's so cool how they are divided into sects. I thought they would be divided as schools or something. Yeah, it's weird. The Cyrenaics asserted pleasure to be dependent upon action or motion. I bet they did. The Epicureans claimed rest or lack of action to be equally productive of pleasure. So that's interesting. That's, you could say, the difference between stimulation and equanimity. So you want to action, pleasure through action is stimulation, whereas pleasure through, not inaction, but through this equanimous, you just kind of sit and you allow it to arise. That's the real pleasure, baby. That's the real diamond pleasure. That's non-dual. Epicurus accepted the philosophy of Democritus concerning the nature of atoms, and based his physics upon the theory. The Epicurean philosophy may be summed up in 4 canons. 1. Sense is never deceived. You are incorrect. And therefore, every sensation, every perception of an appearance is true. 2. Opinion follows upon sense and is superadded or sensation and capable to sensation and capable of truth or falsehood. 3. All opinion attested or not contradicted by the evidence of sense is true. 4. An opinion contradicted or not attested by the evidence of the sense is false. Among the Epicureans of note were Metrodorius, I bet he was Metro, of Lampascus. Where's Lampascus? And Zeno of Sidon, so a different Zeno, and Phaedrus, really a Phaedrus. Phaedrus from Plato's Dialogues, Phaedrus, or a different Phaedrus? Anyway, this entire philosophy is made sussy, a little sus, a little sussy baka, just because of that first, that first canon there. What was that third one? I think he's just saying, like, if you have an opinion and you have evidence for the opinion, it's true. Or if you have an opinion and he's saying not contradicted. So if you make an opinion, this guy's an idiot, and then he doesn't do anything smart, therefore he's an idiot. That's what he's getting at. Eclecticism, may be defined as the practice of choosing apparently irreconcilable doctrines from antagonistic schools and constructing therefrom a composite philosophic system in harmony with the convictions of the eclectic himself. Very based. I think we're all a little eclectic deep down. Eclecticism can scarcely be considered philosophically or logically sound, for as individual schools arrive at their conclusions, okay, let's keep going, by different methods of reasoning, so the philosophic product of fragments from these schools must necessarily be built upon the foundations of conflicting premises. Eclecticism, accordingly, has been designated the layman's cult. In the Roman Empire, little thought was devoted to philosophic theory. I guess you start as an eclectic, but as you go forward, you refine. You refine your peepees, and then eventually they all touch correctly. Consequently, most of its thinkers were the eclectic type. Cicero is an outstanding example of early eclecticism, for his writings are a veritable potpourri of invaluable fragments from earlier schools of thought. Eclecticism appears to have its inception at the moment when men first doubted the possibility of discovering ultimate truth, observing all so-called knowledge to be mere opinion at best. I feel like philosophy went through this in the modern era as well, like after Kant, the philosophical school of like the French philosophy. The French philosophers in the continental region, like Foucault and all of that, just went, yeah, objective truth, it doesn't exist. It's all subjective. Let's just be gay and communist, that kind of thing. I'm something of a Renaissance man myself. Exactly. I feel, did that happen? What is magic composed of? Another guy asks. I can name stuff like divination, low-high magic, which probably encompasses white, black, etc., but I'm not sure what else. What is it composed of? Friendship and magic. Friendship, another guy. Magic is based upon the idea that there are three things in the universe: matter, energy, and consciousness. However, consciousness is primary. It's not epiphenomenal. Consciousness does not arise from matter. Consciousness is either before matter, or matter and consciousness have a weird relationship where they mirror each other. So matter, energy, and consciousness. And you could even state maybe it's a spectrum and one can become the other. Matter can become energy and energy can become consciousness? Maybe. But fundamentally, magic is where consciousness can direct energy and energy can then propel matter. So your subjective nature can influence the objective world. And in doing so, it's also one of those things, the more interesting thing is can you gain knowledge through magic, and what kind of knowledge do you get? That's what I'm interested in. That's why I'm interested in the magical path, because those powers, the power to have an ontokinetic ability, is more of a litmus test that shows you've attained something. But then it's like, what knowledge can you get that a normal person can't get? That's where the interesting thing comes into. Now, observing all so-called knowledge to be mere opinion at best, the less studious furthermore concluded that the wiser course to pursue was to accept that which appeared to be the most reasonable of the teachings, of any school or individual. From this practice, however, arose a pseudo-broad-mindedness, devoid of the element of preciseness found in true logic and philosophy. I guess that's why the Roman philosophers just never hit as hard as the Greeks, eh? The Neo-Pythagorean school flourished in Alexandria, based... Sorry, another guy asked, by objective world, do you only mean the physical, but also... Well, that's interesting. That's my idea of different dimensions has changed radically since reading Prometheus and Atlas back in the day. In Giorgiani's book, Prometheus and Atlas, there is a chapter called The Occultation of Supernature. Like, read that, and that's what I consider the objective world. The Neo-Pythagorean... I'll make that into a video one day, don't you worry. Don't you worry, another guy. Don't you worry. During the 1st century of the Christian era, only 2 names stand out with it. Apollonius of Tyana, very based. Watch American Esoteric's channel. He's got the best video on YouTube on Apollonius of Tyana. Straight up, best video. And Moderatus of Gades. I've never heard of this guy. Okay, Moderatus. I wonder what he's remembered for. Neo-Pythagoreanism is a link between the older pagan philosophies and Neoplatonism. Like the former, it contained many exact elements of thought derived from Pythagoras and Plato. Like the latter, it emphasized metaphysical speculation and ascetic habits. A striking similarity has been observed by several authors between Neo-Pythagoreanism and the doctrines of the Essenes. Special emphasis was laid upon the mystery of numbers. Kabbalah, baby, get that Tetractus out. And it is possible that the Neo-Pythagoreans had a far wider knowledge of the true teachings of Pythagoras than is available today. Based, and probably correct, most likely. Even in the 1st century, Pythagoras was regarded more as a god than a man, and the revival of his philosophy was resorted to apparently in the hope that his name would stimulate interest in the deeper systems of learning. But Greek philosophy had passed the zenith of its splendor. The mass of humanity was awakening to the importance of physical life and physical phenomena. The emphasis upon earthly affairs, which began to assert itself later, reached maturity of expression. In 20th century materialism and commercialism, even though Neoplatonism was to intervene, and many centuries passed before this emphasis took definite form. Okay, looks like we got a... What the hell is this? Aeneas at the Gates of Hell. Okay. Okay. From Virgil's Aeneid. Virgil describes part of the ritual of Greek mystery, possibly the Eleusinians. In the account of the descent of Aeneas, the gate of hell under the guidance of the Sibyl, the prophetess. Of that part of the ritual portrayed above, the immortal poet writes, full in the midst of this infernal road, an elm displays her dusky arms abroad. I bet she does. The god of sleep there hides his heavy head. This is very... I love poetry. This is such a good line. The god of sleep hides his heavy head, and empty dreams on every leaf are spread. Of various forms unnumbered spectres more, centers and double shapes, besiege the door. Before the passage, horrid Hydra stands, and Briareus, with his 100 hands, great rhymes, Gorgons, Grayon, with his triple frame, and vain Chimera vomits empty flame. The chief unsheathed his shining steel, prepared to seized with sudden fear, to force the guard offering the brandished weapon at their face, had not the Sibyl stopped his eager pace, and told him what those empty phantoms were, forms without bodies, and impassive air. Oh, baby! That's good. That's good stuff. What's chat going on about? Bro was a Reddit mod 2,000 years ago. Another guy, I'll make it into a video one day, inverted commas, equals you'll never live to the day where I make it a video. I just need some free time. Coming up, bro, coming up. Fence sitting is a timeless position. Yes. I like to see myself as I'm above both sides. So is face sitting. Okay, Adam, I'm getting frisky there. Raoul Francis. Hello, my brilliantly bold esoteric babe. Thank you, Raoul. Thank you. Everyone's just talking about fence sitting now. And face sitting. Clear writing makes me feel weird. I still have trust issues from Gurdjieff's prose. Yes. Tar, welcome to the chat, Tar, by the way. I agree. And yeah, that's crazy bars right there. That's some impressive stuff. Although Ammonius Saccas was long believed to be the founder of Neoplatonism, that's really interesting. I don't think Ammonius Saccas. There's also two Ammonius Saccases, which is really hard historically. There was a Christian. They both had the same teacher as well, I'm pretty sure, or something like that. But one was a Platonist and one was a Christian. But the Platonic one was the teacher of Plotinus, and so they say he started Neoplatonism. But there's like a text by Ammonius Saccas, and I think it's from the Christian one, but I'm not sure. But it's impossible to find. Someone help me out. Ammonius Saccas, long believed to be the founder of Neoplatonism. The school had its true beginning in Plotinus. Yeah. So Ammonius Saccas is like what Socrates is to Plato, because Socrates never wrote anything down. Ammonius Saccas is to Plotinus. Prominent among the Neoplatonists of Alexandria, Syria, Rome, and Athens were Porphyry, Iamblichus, Salistius, that's one I haven't heard, the Emperor Julian. Julian was cool, but he was boring. Plutarch, and Proclus, based Proclus, Neoplatonism was the supreme effort of decadent pagandom to publish and thus preserve for posterity its secret or unwritten doctrine. In its teachings, an ancient idealism found its most perfect expression. Oh, yes! Neoplatonism was concerned almost exclusively with the problems of higher metaphysics based. It recognized the existence of a secret and all-important doctrine, which from the time of the earliest civilizations had been concealed within the rituals, symbols and allegories of religions and philosophies, to the mind unacquainted with its fundamental tenets. Neoplatonism may appear to be a mass of speculations interspersed with extravagant flights of fancy. Such a viewpoint, however, ignores the institutions of the mysteries. Those secret schools into whose profundities of idealism nearly all of the first philosophies of antiquity were initiated. Yes, indeed. That's it, baby. It's the secret ritual schools is where our academies come from, really, if you think about it. That's the way it happens. That's the way it happens. Adamu says, I have a great friend in Rome. His name's Biggest Dickus. A lot of the names do sound like that. There was one Ammonius Saccas. The two different ones is because Porphyry claims he was a pagan. Oh, okay. So actually it was the same dude. And it was just St. Jerome claims he was a Christian. Porphyry claims he was a pagan. Oh, okay. Is there a text that was preserved? Because I swear there's some like text where he talks about like a divine hermaphrodite. Or a divine androgyne, and it's by Ammonius Saccas, or alleged to be, or it's the writer put his name on it. Raoul Francis, oh, I just got the parallel of Virgil writing a hero descending into hell and Dante having Virgil be his, yeah, exactly. Another guy, he had a wife, you know. At Adam, okay, yeah, the biggest dick. Oh, very funny. Chat, you crack me up. Bossman says, there is a theory, Ammonius Saccas, that he was an Indian priest. Oh, maybe even from the Sakya clan, like the Buddha. Oh, I wouldn't be surprised. Nulu, Porphyry himself was a Christian turned pagan. Very interesting. I didn't know that. So he may have claimed Ammonius Saccas being pagan due to his bias. Okay, true. Schizo prophet, I blame Zoroastrian cults that showed up to Plato's burial to send him off. That is apparently Aristotle. That's a claim from Aristotle, that at Plato's funeral, Magi from the East showed up. So, or there were magi that attended Plato's funeral. Neoplatonism is such a beautiful TLD of all ancient wisdom. Indeed. Indeed. When the physical body of pagan thought collapsed, yeah, the sad violin noises, an attempt was made to resurrect the form by instilling new life into it by the unveiling of its mystical truths. This effort apparently was barren of results. Yeah, I mean, if Julian made his religion more sexy, because if you see Emperor Julian and you see all of his stuff and his laws, he was very ascetic. And if you think about Christianity at the time was everyone was just having parties. Like, this is before, like, you know, there was lots of festivals and fun. And Julian was like, no, less festivals, more asceticism. And it was just like, if you want to start a religion, make it not boring, is the number one rule you gotta follow. And so it's like, it could have happened. It could have happened. Anyway, despite the antagonism, however, between pristine Christianity and Neoplatonism, pardon me, many basic tenets of the latter were accepted by the former and woven into the fabric of patristic philosophy. Previously described Neoplatonism is a philosophic code which conceives every physical or concrete body of doctrine to be merely the shell of a spiritual variety based, which may be discovered through meditation based and certain exercises of a mystic nature. That's what we're doing, baby. That's what we're doing. We're trying to loosen the matter to allow the spirit to come in and to pull out of matter the true man, the immortal. In comparison to the esoteric spiritual truths which they contain, the corporeal bodies of religion and philosophy were considered relatively of little value. Likewise, no emphasis was placed upon material sciences. This is almost a synthesis of everything Nietzsche hated. Yeah. Well, it's one of those things. This is the thing about metaphysics is, when you get into metaphysics, there is a tendency to not be active and to become very passive, contemplative. I'll just contemplate the absolute and forget about my physical body and lack vitalism. And if I just contemplate the absolute, like attracts like, and when I die, I'll be absorbed into the absolute. Nietzsche hated that. Nietzsche's philosophy is vitalism at its core. Nietzsche hated it. So he didn't really like this kind of style of thing. Another guy asks, Richard, thoughts on city chasers? I'm actually more... I understand. Look, the reaction, the first basic reaction to city chasers is, oh, they're spiritually immature. But the people who say, oh, you just want cities, that's just your ego, you're spiritually immature. Those people, from my experience, universally, people who shit on city chasers are just full of themselves. And they're not chasing cities, but they're chasing spiritual clout. They're spiritual materialists in a way. They're chasing enlightenment, and they think they're so spiritual and they're so much better than these other people because, oh, they're just immature. And it's like this spectrum thing. And it's like, so I feel for the city chasers, because in the end, every master, real master, every saint and every founder of a new tradition has all had cities, and so has all displayed miraculous qualities or superhuman abilities. And so it's this thing of like, magical powers and cities are a litmus test of attainment. You can't become enlightened and not have cities. So yeah, I get the thing where it's like, oh, I just want magical powers, not enlightenment. Oh, that guy's doing it for the wrong reasons. But in my experience, there's been like this like a pendulum swing to the other side, and people who just critique the city chasers too much, that is a lack of immaturity in them more than it is on the city chasers. There's a problem that the city thing is there for a reason. There are qualities and there are signs of enlightenment, and cities are one of them. The conscious development of cities has its place. It's just one of those things. What is a city really? What is a magical power really? What is a superhuman ability really? It is an effect. So it's like, oh, if you focus on the city, you'll never arise at that. Yeah, it's the same thing with saying, like, you want to be the best boxer in the world? If you just think about being the world champ and you just watch world champ stuff, but you never actually train, you're never going to become the world champ. Why? Because you're focusing on the effect, not the cause. The cause is just the practice. You just practice, 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 and eventually you'll get world champ. Eventually you'll awaken or crystallize a faculty, or you'll gain a city. The problem isn't to become, oh, someone's obsessed with cities. Oh, they talked about magic powers once, therefore they're spiritually mature. It's like, no. That can be your goal. But it's like the actual process to get there means that you've applied a cause long enough. So at that base level, it means that you've had perseverance. It means you've had fortitude and something within you that's consistent enough. How many spiritual people are like, oh yeah, I'm spiritual, and then they don't have any consistent practice whatsoever? Well, at least the city chasers who are obsessed with cities practice every fucking day. Anyway, I've got a little skin in the game here because in my experience, a lot of people have just... I've had a lot more negative experience with the other side than I have with city chasers. But anyway, I'm rambling now. I gotta keep going. So everyone else talking about Nietzsche. Enigma in the chat. Howdy, Enigma. Been a while. Nietzsche did not understand Christianity. He conflated dogmatic institutional Christianity with the actual teachings of Christ. That is an interpretation, yes. He had some respect for Christ. There's that one line from Nietzsche which I'm always like, oof. It's not true, but it's based, where he basically is like critiquing Christianity, and he says something like, Nietzsche says, there was only ever one Christian, and he died on the cross. And I'm like, oh, that's such a good knock on Christians. That's such a good, that's like... Bam! That's like, if you're just debating a Christian, that's like you've like peppered them up, and that's a right hook to the chin right there. Oh. Anyway, another guy. Neoplatonism sounds based. Yes, it is. Nulu says, Schopenhauer, ancient wisdom enjoyer, hated women. Nietzsche, ancient wisdom denier, simped for women, choose your poison. Which way, Western man? That's funny. Enigma, hating women and simping for them is actually the same at the bottom. Truly an enlightened individual. Each one is the shadow of the other. Schizo, I finally killed my ego, so I'm better than you. Yeah. That's the... In Tibetan Buddhism, they say that someone with cities can accrue merit in one lifetime that would normally take 1,000 lifetimes. Yeah. I mean, this is the thing. People like, don't gain cities because you'll gain too much karma. It's like, yeah, but if you gain a city and your city is the power to heal other people miraculously, you can also purify tens of thousands of more karma, much karma in your life than you would have been unable otherwise. So... which way, esoteric man? More magical powers, more! Nulu, city or thaumaturgy is essentially a reflection of a very refined ability of control of subjective consciousness, such that it becomes reflected in the macrocosm in such a miraculous way. Yeah, that's one good way to define it. That's solid. That's a solid paragraph definition, Nulu. It's good. Bob's man, also, just like you can have cities and lucid dreams, therefore practicing cities can make you more lucid in waking life. Yeah, exactly. Exactly, boss man. Exactly. Schizo prophet, focusing on results and outcomes isn't a problem until people beat themselves over the head about it. And yeah, and that's another aspect of it. Stephen Evans, thank you for the $5, Stephen. We've got a stretch goal in chat, by the way. We got to get a plushie mascot for the chat. So donate now. Donate now, and if we get to 20, I'll buy a plushie mascot that I'll have on stream with me. I'll be obliged to like hold it every stream. Another guy, why would getting a city gain negative karma? Oh, as in, they'll say stuff like, oh, you'll be tempted to misuse your powers, like for personal gain or something. But it's like, I know, you gain some kind of telekinetic ability. You go to a casino, play some dice, make 10K, drop 5K in a charity. Purify karma, bro. Or you gain 100K from the roulette wheel using telekinetic ability. Then you go around your street, or you go to the local bar and you just listen out to people, and you hear, people telling their stories, and oh man, my work's just not giving me enough hours. And then you follow that guy home, and you drop a couple of K in his letterbox or something, and you just do that multiple times. And it's like, once again, people who are like, oh, cities, you gain negative karma, or you'll be tempted to misuse it. They haven't thought with their brains. They've just taken the simplest, most surface level, basic new age slop bullshit and been like, oh, I'm above these things because I'm better than you. I don't want cities. I'm more spiritual. That's why I'm more sympathetic. I know there's people who chase cities and they're completely insane and they're actually a kind of a net negative. They're a bit creepy. But in all honesty, I feel more sympathetic to the city chaser side than I do the wanky people side, because I've just had more negative experiences with those people than the city chasers. That's where I'm coming from. I do recognize there are problems with the city chaser group. There are some people who are actually kind of if they did get cities, they would 100% mind control women in a bar or something. But yeah, and they would use it for wrong purposes. But in purely spiritual context, the other side has just disgusted me way more. Nick G asked, Crowley plushie? No, I'm thinking more of a bird plushie, or maybe a giraffe. And a giraffe called Kevin. A stretched in. Nah, I would get. How about a life-size cardboard cutout of Ryan Gosling just behind me? If we get enough money. How about that, another guy? Now, the term patristic is employed to designate the philosophy of the fathers of the early Christian church. That's right, we're still reading, by the way. Patristic philosophy is divided into two general epochs. How did we get onto cities? We're still on Greek philosophy, bruh. Wait until the Secret Teachings chapter when we're talking about ceremonial magic, bruh. Come on. Ante-Nicene and post-Nicene. Ante-Nicene period, in the main, was devoted to attacks upon paganism and to apologies and defenses of Christianity. The entire structure of pagan philosophy was assailed, and the dictates of faith elevated above those of reason. This is true. So the whole kind of ooh, Scouse dropped £5. You vote for a Cthulhu plushie. Okay, baby Cthulhu, let's go. Yeah, so there's this thing, I find it's in the early church, up to around 300 AD, Christians are basically deciding who's a Christian and who's not. And that's one of the reasons reincarnation is kind of, no, actually it's later. And then by 500 AD, it's it's not the Council of Nicaea. In 500 AD, there's another council, and that's where they take, I'm pretty sure, that's when they take reincarnation out, because they make Saint Origen a heretic. It's there's one from 0 to 300 AD. It's who's a Christian and who's not, and then after that it's it's you're not as Christian as me, basically. That's what they're kind of talking about. In some instances, efforts were made to reconcile evident truths of paganism based with Christian revelation. Eminent among the ante-Nicene fathers were Saint Irenaeus, Clement of Alexandria, and Justin Martyr. That's why there's this. I want to really one day read some church fathers, because specifically the one, because, you know, there's church fathers all the way from, you know, the Roman Empire all the way Syria and into Egypt. The ones in Egypt apparently name drop Hermes in a lot of their texts, and I'm very interested in early Hermetic Christianity. So that's another one day I'll read it. In the post-Nicene period, more emphasis was placed upon the unfoldment of Christian philosophy along Platonic and Neoplatonic lines, resulting in the appearance of many strange documents of a lengthy, rambling, and ambiguous nature, nearly all of which were philosophically unsound. The post-Nicene philosophers included Athanasius, Gregory of Nyssa, Cyril of Alexandria. The parasitic school is notable for its emphasis upon the supremacy of man throughout the universe. Man was conceived to be a separate and divine creation and the crowning achievement of deity, and an exception to the suzerainty of natural law, to the patristics. Oh, sorry, patristic, not parasitic. It was inconceivable that there should ever exist another creature so noble, so fortunate, or so able as man, kill all of the elves, for whose sole benefit and edification all kingdoms of nature were primarily created. Human supremacy. Let's go, baby. These guys, R.I.P., the early church fathers would have loved 40K. Another guy asks, oh, Jason Valencia, you want cities? You do Qigong while listening to the Gateway tapes? It's the best way, bro. Another guy, would those deranged people even be able to get a city? Maybe. Look, even deranged people with enough effort can awaken a little something. I doubt they could ever get, like, very high rank, you know, like levitation on the level of a Buddha or something. But they could definitely get some level of hypnotic ability and control some people. Definitely. Human supremacy. Patristic philosophy culminated in Augustinianism, which may be best defined as Christian Platonism. Yes, opposing the Pelagian doctrine that man is the author of his own salvation. I don't know, man. I'm a bit of a Pelesbian as well. Augustinianism elevated the church and its dogmas to a position of absolute infallibility. So you're the guy. A position which successfully maintained until the Reformation. Based. Gnosticism, a system of, here we are, this is us, boys, of emanationism, interpreting Christianity in terms of Greek, Egyptian, and Persian metaphysics, appeared in the latter part of the first century of the Christian era. Practically all the information extant regarding the Gnostics and their doctrines, stigmatized as heresy by the ante-Nicene church fathers, is derived from the accusations made against them, particularly from the writings of Saint Irenaeus. In the 3rd century appeared Manichaeanism, oh baby, a dualistic system of Persian origin, which taught that God and good and evil, were forever contending for universal supremacy. They were sword fighting with their peepees in the toilet that is the cosmos. In Manichaeanism, Christ is conceived to be the principle of redeeming good, in contradistinction to the man Jesus, who was viewed as an evil personality. Oh, that's a spicy take. So Christ is like a logoic entity, and then Jesus is just the base nature. Augustine also mentions Hermes in a positive light. Really? I thought he was one of the ones that didn't. I gotta check that up. Manichaeism. Not Manichaeanism? You know, I'm slightly dyslexic, by the way. I'm actually just going to put that straight out there. When I saw the word very first time, I've pronounced a lot of words wrong, and I always found spelling so difficult in school. And I remember I think it was like the first time I ever saw the word perseverance. I was like, preservance? It was just completely wrong. I was like, I'm so bad. So dyslexia, baby. Every time I say something wrong, just take a shot. Just keep some alcohol beverage next to you while we're on stream. Just take a shot, baby. Take a shot. The death of Boethius in the 6th century. So this is the whole philosophical jump. We jump from, early, kind of, the philosophy must have been done in these centuries, but it's just missing. And then Boethius in the 6th century, just jump right there. Marks the close of the ancient Greek school of philosophy. The 9th century saw the rise of the school of scholasticism, which sought to reconcile philosophy with theology, representative of the main divisions of scholastic schools, with the eclecticism of John of Salisbury, the mysticism of Bernard of Clairvaux. I would like to read Bernard of Clairvaux one day. Saint Bonaventura, the rationalism of Saint Peter of Abelard, the pantheistic mysticism of Meister Eckhart. Meister Eckhart's the big one. I would love to read Meister Eckhart. Among the Arabian Aristotelians. And this is the thing, people say Arabian Aristotelians. There's this whole thing, apparently, and I didn't know this. When Platonic texts... Oh shit, my pop filter. When Platonic texts got taken from the West to the East to the Islamic world, the names were all mixed together, and Plotinus's Enneads were written under Aristotle. So when Islamic authors talk about Aristotle, they include Plotinus's Enneads in there. So to them, Aristotle is like some giga-chad metaphysician, not just this kind of guy who's a cool polyglot and knows every field, but specifically has this huge metaphysics. That, like, Arabian Aristotelism and Arabian Platonism is actually this very elaborate Neoplatonism. Neoplatonism did not end in the 6th... This is the thing that's interesting. The 6th century marked the close of Greek philosophy. No, it technically continued and continues to this day in the Arabian world. That's the thing that's interesting. It's just the Islamic schools of thought. So, the Aristotle, the Avicenna, Averroes, Al-Kindi, all of those boys. Let's go. The zenith of scholasticism was reached with the advent of Albert Magnus. Based would love to read him as well, and his illustrious disciple, St. Thomas of Aquinas, the man, the myth, the legend. I've got his, like, those great books on my shelf, and I've just got Aquinas's there. Like, I look at the great books, and they're all quite thin, and then you just see Thomas Aquinas's, and they're thick, they're fat, and I look at them, and I'm intimidated by the girth of Thomas Aquinas's knowledge, and I'm just like, oh baby, I'm not sure if I could fit all of that in me. Just Thomas Aquinas is like, he's gonna stretch me out, boy, when I get there eventually. Thomasism, the philosophy of Thomas Aquinas, sometimes referred to as the Christian Aristotle, and this is the thing that's interesting. Augustine is the Christian Plato. Aquinas is the Christian Aristotle. Where's the Neoplatonic Christian? That's Meister Eckhart. And Meister Eckhart was seen as a heretic and forgotten. And so this is why Christianity has been so stagnant all these years. Christianity needs to be reborn in a Neoplatonic way. And I don't think... And there's too many contradistinctions, I think, for it to be really... I mean, I think that's why orthodoxy is really making such a big impact, especially online. In online meme Christianity, everybody seems to be going orthodox. Why? Because it's the most Neoplatonic out of all the Christianities. Magnus is such a Chad name, says our tuition. Exactly. Based. Yeah, exactly. I completely agree. Now, Aquinas sought to reconcile the various factions of the scholastic school. Thomasism was basically Aristotelian, with the added concept that faith is a projection of reason. That's very spicy. Aquinas said that his mystical experience made all his writings relevant. Yes. Correct, boss man. So if you just have a mystical experience yourself, you don't need to read Aquinas. Well, this is the thing. Aquinas had a mystical experience But would he have had that mystical experience if he didn't go through the scholasticism? This is the argument that Tomberg makes, is his mysticism is the result, the fruit of his scholasticism. The scholasticism isn't a negative thing that blocked mysticism. It was actually there to aid it in a sense. So, but yeah, it's that fundamental thing. The Aquinas's work is actually unfinished. He spent his whole life writing it, then he had a mystical experience, and when he came out of it, he was like, yeah, nah, everything I wrote was wrong, and just stopped. Interesting note that St. Dionysius the Areopagite was a yeah, and that's the other thing. There's Christian Neoplatonism kind of all throughout, like that. That's the other thing as well. That's actually not Christian Neoplatonism. That's just straight Neoplatonism smuggled into Christianity. Albertus Magnus lectured the young St. Thomas, and we have St. Thomas's notes on Dionysius Christian Neoplaton. That's really interesting, Nuala. One day I'll read it. Now, we're getting close to... might have to find a good break. Okay, when we reach this image, that'll be the end of today's. So let's plow, guys. Let's plow. We got some paragraphs to do in the next five minutes. Scoticism. Oh, are we going to get into Duns Scotus? Or the doctrine of voluntarism, promulgated by Johann Duns Scotus, a Franciscan scholastic. Sean Biodry? Thank you, Sean, for the $5. Or $4.99. Guys, we're almost a quarter of the way to getting that plushie, guys. If one more person donates, we'll be a quarter of the way to getting a plushie. A Franciscan scholastic emphasized the power and efficacy of the individual will based, as opposed to Thomasism. The outstanding characteristic of scholasticism was its frantic effort to cast all European thought in an Aristotelian mold. Eventually, the schoolmen descended to the level of mere wordmongers, who picked the words of Aristotle so clean that nothing but the bones remained. It was this decadent school of meaningless verbiage against which Sir Francis Bacon directed his bitter shafts of irony, and which he relegated to the potter's field of discarded notions based. Tyler, come on fam, let's get this. Guys, we just got another donation. Thank you, Tyler. We just got another donation. That's 5 donations. All we need is 20 donations. We're a quarter of the way to getting a plushie. Guys, we're almost there. But anyway, that's based. Also, Francis Bacon, another guy, I got to read his essays one day. But yes, Duns Scotus, that's the guy who was so based that his own students killed him one day. The story of his death is his own students were so pained by his teachings that they all got up and just started stabbing him with their pens. Oh, Dagger Thur plushie from Adamu Adamu. Donated $2, but you need to have a minimum of 5 to get into the running. So thank you for the donation, Adamu Adamu. But it didn't count to the plushie. But guys, if we just donate, we can get that plushie. The Baconian, or inductive system of reasoning, whereby facts and logic are arrived by at a process of observation and verified by experimentation. So proof. This is science. This is the organon. This is via proving things we arrive at knowledge. Francis Bacon is the only empiricist I like. Hey, Jason Valencia, we got this. Nice. So that's 6 donations. We got, guys, we're more than a quarter of the way there. Just 4 more donations, we'll be halfway to a new plushie, guys. A plushie. Francis Bacon cleared the way for the schools of modern science. Bacon was followed by Thomas Hobbes, for some time his secretary. Oh, was Thomas Hobbes Francis Bacon's secretary? Huh. Who held mathematics to be the only exact science and thought to be essentially a mathematical process. Hobbes declared matter to be the only reality, not based, the scientific investigation to be limited to the study of bodies, the phenomena relative to their probable causes, and the consequences which flow from them under every variety of circumstance. Hobbes laid special stress upon the significance of words, declaring understanding to be the faculty of perceiving the relationship between words and the objects of which they stand. Kimberly K. Only if you sleep with it at night. Kimberly K donates another $5. That's 7 donations, guys. We're almost halfway there, guys. We're almost halfway there. We got to get it before the end of today's reading. And guys, we're almost halfway to getting a plushie. We're so close. Having broken away from the scholastic and theological schools, post-Reformation or modern philosophy experienced a most prolific growth along many diverse lines. According to humanism, man is the measure of all things. Rationalism makes the reasoning faculties the basis of all knowledge. So not empiricism, rationalism. Political philosophy holds that man must comprehend his natural social and national privileges. Empiricism declares that alone to be true which is demonstrable by experiment or experience. Moralism emphasizes the necessity of right conduct as a fundamental philosophical tenet. Idealism based asserts the realities of the universe to be superphysical, either mental or physical. So idealism is the only one that still has mysticism or hermeticism caked into it as it goes through. Realism, the reverse. The phenomenalism restricts knowledge to facts or events, which can be scientifically described or explained. The most recent developments in the field of philosophical thought are behaviorism and neorealism. So this is Manly P. Hall talking about his time. So at the time, I'm pretty sure, I mentioned before, Manly P. Hall published this in his 20s. I'm pretty sure he was like 28, so almost 30, but late 20s, he made this book. So 1928. Ooh, Bob dropping a 6. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, Bobby. Boss Man. Thank you, Boss Mans. Thank you, Boss Mans. Very nice. That's 8 donut. Guys, we're almost halfway. We're so close. We are so close to halfway to getting a plushie. Guys. So close. Just 2 more donations. So neorealism, the former, estimates intrinsic characteristics through analysis of behavior, that's behaviorism, and the latter may be summed up as the total extinction of idealism. Oh, neorealism was well, I guess neorealism is the Marx. Well, Marx was a neorealist in that sense. Marxism is a neorealism of philosophy. That's interesting. Very interesting. Baruch Spinoza, the eminent Dutch philosopher, conceived God to be a substance absolutely self-existent and needing no other conception besides itself to render it complete and intelligible. The nature of this being was held by Spinoza to be comprehensible only through its attributes. So this is the Spinoza using rationalism to try and deduce God based, which are extension and thought. These combine to form an endless variety of aspects or modes. The mind of man is one of the modes of infinite thought. The body of man, one of the modes of infinite extension. Okay. Through reason, man is enabled to elevate himself above the illusory world of the senses and find eternal repose in perfect union with the divine essence. So I'm not sure Spinoza is... So he's a rationalist, but he's like this weird mystic rationalist. Spinoza, it has been said, deprived God of all personality, making deity synonymous with the universe. Did he deprive it, or did he just not want to talk about it? That's the thing. German philosophy. Okay, we're getting to the end, guys. The end of this paragraph. We end the stream. We got to get there. Got to get that plushie. We've only got a couple more lines. German philosophy had its inception with Gottfried Wilhelm Leibniz. Okay, so Leibniz is the first German philosopher. Jakob Boehm comes into the chat. Anyway, whose theories are permeated. Although I would really like to read Leibniz, really. Leibniz, apparently, people reading Leibniz now are all interpreting and finding some stuff about Leibniz, how he's influenced by Kabbalah and he's influenced by, like, specifically Plotinus. He's like Plotinus come again. And I'm like, Leibniz, one of the inventors of calculus. There's something sexy and hermetic about Leibniz. So I would love to read him one day. I want them monads, baby. Spray the monads all over me. Whose theories are permeated with the qualities of optimism and idealism based. Leibniz's criteria of sufficient reason revealed to him an insufficiency of Descartes' theory of extension, and he therefore concluded that substance itself contained an inherent power in the form of an incalculable number of separate and all-sufficient units. Matter, reduced to its ultimate particles, ceases to exist as a substantial body, being resolved into a mass of immaterial ideas or metaphysical units of power based, to which Leibniz applied the term monad. Thus, the universe is composed of an infinite number of separate monadic entities, and the monadic entities have consciousness. So this is the beginning of panpsychism, baby. Let's go! Unfolding spontaneously through the objectification of innate active qualities. All things are conceived as consisting of single monads of varying magnitudes or of aggregations of these bodies, which may exist as physical, emotional, mental, or spiritual substances. God is the first and greatest monad. The spirit of man is an awakened monad, in contradistinction to the lower kingdoms whose governing monadic powers are in a semi-dormant state. Awakening. We need to awaken, guys. Awaken the monadic atom within our hearts. Read Dayspring of Youth. Let's go. Another guy in the chat. Quite late to ask, what do you guys think of the new overlay? I think the overlay is groovy. I think it works. Now, we've reached, one more page. Sean, dropping $5 into the chat. Okay. He drops the money. I listen. Awaken D's nuts, says Adam. Okay. We're over time, but you know what? I'll do one more chapter for Sean, for little Sean donation. Okay. Well, sorry, chapter, one more page. Oh. Where are we here? The Ptolemaic scheme of the universe. I love these pictures, by the way. In ridiculing the geocentric system of astronomy expounded by Claudius Ptolemy, modern astronomers... Modern astrologers have overlooked the philosophic key to the Platonic system. Ptolemaic system. The universe of Ptolemy is a diagrammatic representation of the relationships existing between the various divine and elemental parts of every creature, and it's not concerned with astronomy as the science is now comprehended. In the above figure, special attention is called to the three circles of the zodiacs surrounding the orbits of the planets. These zodiacs represent the threefold spiritual constitution of the universe. The orbits of the planets are governors of the world based, and the four elemental spheres in the center represents the physical constitution of both man and the universe. Ptolemy's scheme of the universe is simply a cross-section of the universal aura, the planets and the elements to which he refers having no relation to those recognized by modern astronomers. Based. And there we go, out tuition with another 5. The will of the people demands yet one more page. God damn, so that's 2 more pages. Oof. Oof. And that's it, guys. We reached halfway. That's 10 whole donations. You know what that means, guys? We're halfway to getting a new plushie. Halfway. Let's go. We've already gotten 10 donations. We just need 10 more. And that's a plushie. Raoul says, Mr. Richard, you must start streaming on payday. What's your payday, bro? Can we get half a plushie? Richard is easily bribed. Yes, I am. Yes, I'm completely compromised by that bag. Let me just see, is this... Okay. So this is a page. Okay, let's read some more. Let's read some more. I'm at least owing you guys that much. Neo-Stoicism in the chat. Howdy. Though a product of Leibnizian Wolffian school, Immanuel Kant, like Locke, so that's John Locke there, the wealth of nations, dedicated himself to the investigation of the powers and limits of human understanding. The result was his critical philosophy embracing the critique of pure reason, the critique of practical reason, and the critique of judgment. Dr. W.J. Durant sums up Kant's philosophy in the concise statement that he rescues mind from matter. I would say he rescues metaphysics, because at that point, it's like, you know, Thomas Hobbes and Hume are all like, forget about metaphysics, that's just superstition. Let's do philosophy. And Kant saves metaphysics, but he closes the door to metaphysics and says, yes, metaphysical reality is true. There's a phenomenal world and there's a nominal world, but you cannot see it. And that creates a break in modern philosophy. There's analytical philosophy, which basically just accepts what Kant says, like, no, you can't see into the normal world. Okay, shrug shoulders, keep going, just doing logic and word chopping and logic chopping and doing bullshit. And then continental philosophy is basically all the philosophers who read Kant and just went, actually, and just were like, no, you're wrong. So like Hegel and Schopenhauer were just like, no, Kant is wrong, and had their own reasons why he was wrong. Like, I think Hegel summed up as like history. Via studying history, you can see there's something in the nominal world affects the physical world. The zeitgeist of the time, the zeitgeist influences kind of history. There's something in the nominal world that's leading history. And Schopenhauer is basically your subjective, internal subjective world is the nominal world. So although you don't see directly into the nominal world, there's some nominal part that you can experience. And then he kind of extends his philosophy outwards. Neoplatonism in the chat. Let's go. Oh, by the way, Necrodancer given more money. One more page. God damn it, guys. But hey, we got 11 donations. We're almost there. Just 9 more and we'll get a plushie. Wow. Okay. Let's keep going, guys. But yeah, Kant created a divide in philosophy between the analytics. I believe it's after Kant you see this divide. The analytics and the continentals. So the analytics like Bertrand Russell and Popper and all of those guys, and then you got the continentals like good old Nietzsche, Henri Bergson, all those French guys. All of those guys are continental. The mind, Kant conceived to be the selector and coordinator of all perceptions, which in turn are the results of sensations, grouping themselves about some external object. In the classification of sensations and ideas, the mind employs certain categories of sense, time, and space, of understanding, quality, relation, modality, and causation, and the unity of a perception. Being subject to mathematical laws, time and space are considered absolute and sufficient basis for exact thinking. Kant's practical reason declared that while the nature of noumenon could never be comprehended by reason, there we go, so the metaphysical world exists, but we cannot comprehend it fully, the facts of morality proves the existence of 3 necessary postulates: free will, immortality, and God. So he saves metaphysics. He saves God. In the Critique of Pure Judgment, Kant demonstrates the union of the noumenon and the phenomenon in art and biological evolution. And so you see this continued on by people like Schopenhauer. Schopenhauer talking about the will and representation. Everything you see is a representation, and behind it there's this will, this undulating, seething will. And art is a mixture. It is a representation, but it's mixed. The artist's will is mixed into it. So when you see a painting, you're influenced. The representation influences you in so much that the artist's will is there and is impacting you. The artist's emotion is there and impacting you. And that's why Schopenhauer believes music is the highest form of art, because music has no representation. It's just pure will influencing you. So you got to get down and boogie. R.I.P. Schopenhauer would have loved dubstep. German super-intellectualism is the outgrowth of an overemphasis of Kant's theory of the autocratic supremacy of the mind over sensation. And thought. The philosophy of Johann Gottlieb Fichte was a projection of Kant's philosophy, wherein he attempted to unite Kant's practical reason with his pure reason. Fichte held that the known is merely the contents of the consciousness of the knower, and that nothing can exist to the knower until it becomes part of those contents. Nothing is actually real, therefore, except the facts of one's own mental experience. Huh. Okay. I would love to read some Fichte, not gonna lie. Out tuition in the chat. That face when you'll never listen to Death Grips with Schopenhauer. R.I.P. 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 Schopenhauer would have loved Linkin Park. Recognizing the necessity of certain objective realities. Friedrich Wilhelm Joseph von Schilling, I would love to read Schilling as well, who succeeded Fichte in the chair of philosophy at Jena, first employed the doctrine of identity as the groundwork of a complete system of philosophy, whereas Fichte regarded self as the absolute. Yeah, I feel like Fichte got a kind of a bad take there, but I think Fichte has something interesting to say about the when these idealistic philosophers talk about absolute and the individual, that's where they get somewhat mystical. Von Schilling conceived infinite and eternal mind to be the all-pervading cause. Realization of the absolute is made possible by intellectual intuition. Oh, baby. Oh, pee-pee strong. Neoplatonism coming back. Which, being a superior or spiritual sense, is able to disassociate itself from subject and object. Literally, damn, Schilling literally went full esoteric there. Like, this is the academy, and Schilling is just like, y'all, like, are gay. Empiricism, rationalism, poo-poo, intuition, let's go. Intuition into gnosis. He's a Gnostic. He's a crypto-Gnostic in the academy, bro. Give Schilling his dues. Kant's categories of space and time, von Schilling conceived to be positive and negative, respectively, and material existence, the result of the reciprocal action of these two expressions. Von Schilling also held, I think that you got a little typo there, also held that the absolute in its process of self-development, so the absolute itself is churning and developing, just fucking philosophical. I'm just from the excerpts of this philosophy, I can tell that I would love Schilling, just reading Schilling. Proceeds according to a law of rhythm. My intellectual pee-pee is throbbing right now if you can't tell. Law of rhythm, baby. Gurdjieff would love it. Of three movements. Law of three. This is like, bro. Man. Gotta get some Schilling. Gotta get it. Look at this. Law of three right here. This secret, Gnostic, Hermetic philosophy smuggled into the academy. Let's go. The first, a relative movement, is the attempt. So the first isn't the active, affirming force, the attempt of the infinite to embody itself in the finite. Oh, yes. The second, that of subsumption? Okay. So first is active, second is an absorption. So maybe passive is a good way to describe that. is the attempt of the absolute to return to the infinite after involvement. Oh, baby, this is Neoplatonic. This is so the infinite is coming into the... so imagine throwing a ball against a wall. What happens? The ball travels, it hits the wall and bounces back. So the infinite travels to the finite, reaches a limit, and then ascends back. The third, that of reason, is the neutral point, wherein the two former movements are blended. So that process of going down and moving back up, that string in between those two extremes, that is reason or the soul. Sorry, I'm really just getting it on, baby. Oh, I love this. This guy, Schilling, is cooking. He's not cooking, he cooked. He cooked, and we've just been worrying about French philosophy this whole time. Baby, let's get back to the German idealists. Mwah! Black Raven, howdy there in the chat. I see you there. Oh, this is Philosophy Hub. This is Philosophy Hamster. This is philosophy videos. This is Pink Philosophy. I don't know, what are the other weird video sites that have gentleman's specialist videos that I can riff on now? So, and this is the thing that sucks about German philosophy. Like Fichte and Schilling, they both get completely shadowed by Hegel. Hegel ruined it. So, and same with Schoppe. Same with old Schoppe. But Schoppe survives because of Nietzsche. Nietzsche really has a debt to Schopenhauer. So people, when they think German idealism, they all read Hegel, or they go idealism gay and they go Nietzsche. And maybe from Nietzsche they go back into Schopenhauer. But Fichte and Schelling just get forgotten, and I'm, oh my god! We gotta get a Schelling revival happening, guys. We gotta get that happening. Oh. Scouse says, this is what happens when he goes a few pages too long. Yeah, baby. Yeah, baby. Well, I'm gonna read down to this picture here, and then I'll stop, okay? We're going almost 2 hours here. Sorry, everyone. So George William Frederick Hegel considered the intellectual intuition of von Schelling to be philosophically unsound. Hegel, how dare you? How dare you? Disgusting. And hence turned his attention to the established system of philosophy based upon pure logic. Disgusting. Filthy. Rationalist. Rationalism and its consequences. And its consequences have been a disaster for philosophy and German idealism in general. Disgusting. Of Hegel, it has been said that he began with nothing and showed with logical precision how everything had proceeded from it in logical order. Okay, that's actually based, because that's like negative existence. That's basically Kabbalah. He's gone from like the absolute, the Ein, to the Ein Sof, to emanation. But he's doing it without intuition. He's doing it just logically. Gay. Bruh. Hegel could have been good. Hegel was so close to being good, but instead of being a crypto-Gnostic, he just went back to rationalism. Simped for just the mind. Oh, Nulu, you read a bit of critical historical introduction to the philosophy of mythology by Schelling. Ooh, that sounds sexy. And it is intrinsically hermetic. Oh, baby. I'm gonna get that book, I'm gonna read it, and its pages are gonna be stuck together, because Hegel elevated logic to a position of supreme importance. I bet he did. Filthy rationalist. In fact, as a quality of the absolute itself. God he conceived to be a process of unfolding which never attains to the condition of unfoldment. In like manner, thought is without either beginning or end. Hegel further believed that all things owe their existence to their opposites, and all opposites are actually identical. This is why he gets me. He's so esoteric. Hegel is also a little hermetic as well, but I'm like, why did you do it, Hegel? Why? Why? I'm just like, I feel like the end scene from Seven, and I'm Brad Pitt, and Hegel is Kevin Spacey. And Hegel's just like, I'm like, where's Schelling, Hegel? What's in the box, Hegel? And Hegel's just like, and I'm like, Hegel, what are you doing? That's what I feel like right now. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? Thus, the only existence is the relationship of opposites to each other. Male to female, left to right, pee-pee to other pee-pee, through whose combinations new elements are produced, as the divine mind is an eternal process of thought never accomplished. Hegel assails the very foundation of theism, and his philosophy limits immortality to the ever-flowing deity alone. Evolution is constantly the never-ending flow of divine consciousness out of itself. All creation, though continually moving, never arrives at any state other than that of ceaseless flow. God damn it! It's like, I want to hate Hegel now. I want to hate him, but he's just so based I can't. Oh, fuck. How does he do it? Oh, bruh. This is just it. This is what that movie where the bad guy does something heinous, but then the bad guy is like sexy and like, and then I'm like, God damn. And you don't want to kill him. And this is just it. This is me with the gun pointing at Hegel, and I'm like crying. I'm like, I can't pull the trigger. I can't hate Hegel. God damn it. Rahul Francis says, Richard, I have friends who want to get into esoteric topics, but every time I tell them to start reading philosophy, they roll their eyes and groan. You got any advice or perhaps a way to skip philosophy? So this is the hard thing, because when it's not philosophy, it's the perception of philosophy. Nowadays, people see philosophy as just like the analytical school, logic chopping, or when they think of continental philosophy, they just think of the French philosophers who were all Marxist communists, which isn't here nor there technically. The problem is what's at the base of Marxism? Dialectical materialism. So it's the antithesis of esotericism, or it's the antithesis of, a Marxist would look at the Golden Dawn and be like, what is this? What is this but just bourgeoisie decadence? This is the reason why all occultists within a specific period of time, like 1920s to like 1960s, were all right-wing technically, just purely because the left were all communists. So it's this thing. You have to frame philosophy differently. Tell them, don't get into philosophy. Tell them to get into metaphysics, and then trick them. Slide. You can't just force philosophy in through the front. You gotta lubricate the dildo of philosophy and slip it in the back. So don't talk philosophy, be like metaphysics. This is what we're talking about, boys. All magic and esotericism in the West, if they're gonna be honest, is Neoplatonism. All Kabbalah, all Gnosticism, all Hermetics just has a Neoplatonic backbone, period. You're gonna have to interact with Iamblichus eventually, Plotinus eventually, or someone who's been influenced via those things. Every form of magic comes from has a Neoplatonic backbone, at least, evidently, in some way. So that's the base. That's the base ground. Other than that, I would just say, get Giorgiani's Prometheus and Atlas and just throw it at him. Because that is technically, he does a little history of philosophy in that, but really he's talking about the history of parapsychology. And parapsychology is esoteric, and I actually recommend that occultists study a little bit of parapsychology. Not because parapsychology goes super far, but because it has a foundation that's scientific and that you can use to then clap back at people who are pure materialists. And Giorgiani's book on Prometheus and Atlas, it's an aggregate of all parapsychological research in like the last 100 years. It is phenomenal. It is throbbing. But he starts that book basically talking about Giordano Bruno being burnt by the church and then goes from there. And it's actually like based. It's literally Prometheus and Atlas is, but I want to make a video on I'll make a video on it one day, guys. Anyway. Out tuition. And Hegel knows you won't pull the trigger. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Hegel is the evil villain where you're holding the gun and you're crying and the villain's just looking at you like, that's freaking Hegel. Just smirking at you. We didn't hear about Neoplatonism in my Wicca course. Yeah, Wicca... Hey, Wicca, if you look at it, it's all plagiarized. So Wicca... It began how? Gerald Gardner. All plagiarized from Aleister Crowley's Book of the Law. Aleister Crowley got everything from the Golden Dawn. Let's be honest. Golden Dawn is what? Based off of Hermetic Kabbalah. What's Hermetic Kabbalah based off of? Well, it's based off of traditional Kabbalah. Kabbalistic theory as a whole is based off of what? Hebraic doctrine? Yeah, and Hebraic doctrine, hermeneutics, Hebraic hermeneutics and exegesis of their own texts. Yeah, technically. But really, who are the Hebrew schools kind of influenced by the most? You know, ancient Alexandria, it wasn't just all Hebrews. That was Greek philosophy. Philo of Alexandria was... Philo is a Hebrew. Leader of the Hebrew is a Hebrew. His name is Philo. That's a Greek name. He's going to be influenced by Greek philosophers. Kabbalah is inherently Neoplatonic with extra steps. Kabbalah is literally emanationist Neoplatonism with a Jewish paint job. Straight up. That's why I hate people online. I can't stand people online who are like, Kabbalah, but that's Jewish black magic. And I'm like, bro, stop watching Tucker Carlson. Read a fucking book. Oh my god. Anyway. Craig Howard says, my favorite parapsychological book is Dean Radin's Real Magic. Yeah. Yeah, Dean Radin is based. Mega based. That's interesting, out tuition. Anyway, let's finish this one last paragraph. We've already gone over 2 hours now, guys. You guys, you guys trolled me into tangenting off into another half hour. So let's go. Let's finish this off. Johann Friedrich Herbert's philosophy. I don't know who that is. Herbert's? Herbert. This guy sounds like he watches Wallace. This guy sounds like he watches Wallace and Gromit. Was a realistic reaction from the idealism of Fichte and von Schelling. To Herbert, the true basis of philosophy was the great mass of phenomena continually moving through the human mind. Okay, I dig it. Examination of phenomena, however, demonstrates that a great part of it is unreal. At least in this seems like a pre-Husserlian phenomenology. This is really interesting. At least incapable of supplying the mind with actual truth. To correct the false impressions caused by phenomena and discover reality, Herbert believed it is necessary to resolve phenomena into two separate elements. For reality exists in the elements and not in the whole. He stated that objects can be classified in three general terms: thing, matter, and mind. The first, a unit of several properties. The second, an existing object. And the third, a self-conscious being. Ooh. So a thing is several units of properties. So if you say apple is a thing, an apple is several properties. An apple is green, an apple is shiny, an apple tastes sweet or sour, an apple is round. All of those properties combine together. So if you don't say apple, if you say green, round, sweet, shiny, crunchy. Eventually you come up with something in your mind that's of an apple. Is that several properties overlaying into a thing? Matter is, the second is an existing object, so just something that's just an object that exists. And the mind, a conscious being. All three notions give rise, however, to certain contradictions, with whose solution Herbert is primarily concerned. For example, consider matter, capable of filling space. It, if reduced to its ultimate state, it consists of incomprehensibility, minute units of divine energy occupying no physical space whatsoever. Ooh, Tree of Classical Mythology. Do another page, you son of a bitch, necromancer. Now we can't go. We can't keep going, guys. We got to end somewhere. I might just read this. Oh, that $5 extra from Necrodancer. I'll read this. The Tree of Classical Mythology, from Horton Here's a New Pantheon. Before a proper appreciation of the deep scientific aspects of Greek mythology is possible, it is necessary to organize the Greek pantheon and arrange its gods and goddesses and various superhuman hierarchies in concatenated order. Did he mean concentrated, or am I just poopy bumming? Is this a word? Link things together. Okay, so it just means in a kind of a technical way. The Greek pantheon, and arrange gods and goddesses and various superhuman hierarchies in a concatenated order. Proclus, the great Neoplatonist, in his commentaries on the theology of Plato, gives an invaluable key to the sequence of various deities in relation to the first cause and the inferior powers emanating from themselves. When thus arranged, the divine hierarchies may be likened to branches of a great tree. The roots of this tree are firmly embedded in an unknowable being. Oh, so esoteric, baby. The trunk, Proclus also gets my pee-pee hard. Not gonna lie. The trunk and I bet it's larger, branches of the tree symbolize the superior gods, the twigs and leaves the innumerable existences dependent upon the first and unchanging power. I feel like there's a disconnect. He's talking about Herbert, and then we kind of don't get the end of Herbert's thing there. Oh, we just go off onto Schopenhauer? Anyway, we'll start Schopenhauer next week. I'm just going to end there, guys. And we'll get to some more next week. How far are we off at the end? Oh, we're almost ending this. So next week we'll finally finish the introduction to secret teachings of all ages. So let's see the chat. Nulu says there's also Iamblichean Neoplatonism where he's slightly different. Yeah, there's a... I mean, all of the different Neoplatonists are basically a separate school. Like, from Plotinus onwards, I would say there's Porphyry and Iamblichus are contemporaries, and they're different from each other. Porphyry sees himself as a continuation of Plotinus, and Iamblichus sees himself as a part of the Neoplatonic school, but he's like, Egyptian magic is cool, we should do theurgy, whereas Porphyry is like, no, contemplate the absolute. Yes, Enigma, as an esotericist, what's your take on evolutionary theory? Do you outright dismiss it, or do you fit it in a broader idealist framework? Evolution, devolution, and involution are three different things. Idea of evolution is we started from basic bitch, and we increase and there's progress. Devolution is we make progress and then we devolve sometimes. Say you become more complicated and then due to environmental factors and lack of supplies, you become less complicated to become more efficient to survive or something. So evolution and devolution. Involution means there was a starting point, not at basic bitch, but starting point at a higher level, and you involuted and went down. Actually, am I getting it flipped? Is it evolution, involution, and then devolution? Anyway, these are the different things. The esoteric take on evolution is that Darwinists have it backwards. We didn't start as basic bitch cells and become more complicated. Humans didn't. We didn't start as losers and then we've become more advanced and we're better now. Esoteric anthropology states humans started as not gods, but something close to gods or something superior, and we devoluted, involuted, and we just went down, and we've arrived at this state. We used to live thousands of years. We no longer live thousands of years. We used to have clairvoyance. The internal eye is closed. We used to be one with nature. We're now atomized. That is the esoteric take on evolution. Shorty got low. Oh, we're talking about Ken Wheeler in the chat. Love Kenny. I actually quite like Kenny. He kind of recycles a lot of stuff, but he's fun. He's really fun. I'm reading this book now, 38% through. Hey, Gioello Acula in the chat. Cool. What chapter are we on? We are at the introduction, Gio. Schizoprophet. It's the key. What are we talking about? Another guy says $5 equals one paragraph. Well, we've gotten to the point where I just need to stop. So $5 is a thank you. We're almost there as well. Just 8 more donations, guys. Anyway, chronological doesn't fit. Are we talking about the philosophical chronology? Yeah. He seems to be flipping back and forwards a little bit. Out tuition. Yes. What is the mulch from which chaos feeds upon itself? I'll save that for a Q&A. I've had a copy of Euclid's Geometry. Only recently realized it's Proclus who compiled it. Proclus was based, bro. Nulu. Good stream, Richard. Thank you. So we're all saying goodbye now? Excellent. Excellent. Yes. Yes. Goodbye, everybody. Goodbye. I'll see y'all next time. Mwah.